Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Your Next Business Bestie. My name is Jenn Hart, and I'm your host. This week, I have a very unique episode for you all. I think this is only the second time that I have someone on the podcast that I've never spoken to before. And so I actually, Ellie, we're going to jump into this, but I don't actually know how your PR gal found me. But I was such a pleasant surprise because you align so much with what we're doing with the podcast, what I'm doing with my business. But before I get too far ahead, everyone, welcome Ellie to the show. Hi, Ellie. How are you?
Jen, I'm doing great. Thanks for taking a risk on me, I guess, not
Yeah,
knowing me and having this conversation anyway. I'm really excited.
very cool. Yeah, why don't you tell everybody, 10,000 foot view, what is it that you do?
So my name is Ellie Steinbrink. I am a personal stylist, a brand coach, and a speaker, and now I'm a podcast host. So that's a very exciting new development for me. This is something I've been doing for the past 5 years. I work primarily with ambitious female business owners, leaders, entrepreneurs who are ready to take their style to the next level. And the style really becomes just an inside out expression of all the work they've been doing to get themselves to the next level and who are ready to start showing up and being more visible in a much more authentic way. So, yes, I'm a stylist and yes, I love shopping and styling, but for me, style is really more of an inside out transformation. I'm sure we'll talk all about that here. But my job has not always been to be a stylist. I originally started my career in marketing and branding. I spent most of my time in client service in an ad agency, although I did some other things around that, but that was the bulk of my time. And in 2020, like long story short, I lost my job due to the pandemic and it launched me into a totally different trajectory. Now, there was lots of things happening leading up to that point that ultimately led me to say, this is my time where I want to switch careers and follow my
Um,
true passion, which is style. And so that has been my last 5 years of building this business, and I'm loving every bit of it. But I'm going to say, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a lot, Jen, that transition was really difficult. It came with a lot of certainty internally
mhm.
that I was doing the right thing, but boy, was it scary.
Yeah, and I think that's a common thread. There's two very common threads I'm finding in this podcast adventure and in my 7 years of business. A lot of us were kind of thrown into entrepreneurship without knowing what on earth we were doing. For me, I was jobless, on the verge of homeless. I had gone through a massive breakup and was left with what the hell am I going to do now? And I started off as a virtual assistant and I took any work that was thrown my way. It was, oh,
Hmm.
you'll pay me $10 to create a social media plan. Cool. I laugh now. But we all start somewhere, but so many of us start with like the universe deciding that this is our path now. It's, hold
Hmm.
on tight and this is what you're going to do. But what were those initial months, that initial year? What was it like? What were the feelings behind the whole trajectory of your life changing very quickly?
Yeah. And it honestly felt quick, but because the reality is I had been thinking about this for a
Mm.
very long time, like years, in fact. And if we go all the way back to when I was a little girl, this was always my passion. I was changing outfits and, putting different clothes on and I was experimenting. I think for me, I grew up, my mom was an artist, my dad's a farmer. So I was surrounded by creativity and by entrepreneurs honestly, if you want to call farming an entrepreneur. I guess it kind of is,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah.
business owners. But clothes and putting together outfits was a way that I creatively expressed myself. And that never really stopped into, all of my school years and then into when I, selected a job. And I remember people telling me all the time, when I was working, in other jobs, they would say, Ellie, would you just come and help me in my closet, put outfits together, go shopping with me? And I remember thinking at the time, oh, wouldn't that be awesome if that was my life? And I kind of like flippantly said it as if it was not real. And in my mind at that time in my 20s, I really did not see a real path forward to how I always just thought, well, this is something you like, it's not something you do.
Mhm.
And so that was a story I had consistently told myself. Well, fast forward, I'm still in the marketing career and I'm Now have my two babies. At the time they were three and a newborn. And I was beyond burned out for multiple reasons. I think for being a mom now of two little babies, a husband that travels every single week, feeling like a single mom. But the real thing was that I was coming to a realization that marketing was not the end all be all for me. I was not only exhausted just from my personal life and circumstances, but the work itself I was doing was not lighting me up. And it was a really scary feeling because Jen, at this point, I had reached what I thought was the pinnacle of what I wanted. I had been working in an ad agency, as I said, and I always wanted to be, I was in client services. I always thought I'm going to become the director of client services. And that was like the top of the game,
Yeah.
for that particular industry. And here I am in that role, and I hate my life. And it was showing up in all sorts of ways. Like I was sick more often. I started calling in sick even when I wasn't sick. I mean, it's embarrassing,
Yeah.
honestly, to talk about the ways in which I was trying to survive. And I knew something was off. I knew something needed to shift. And I remember there was actually the company I was working for had hired a business coach. Um, that we got to see every month. And so I started to talk with her, probably against my best interest to talk to a life coach who was being hired by my company, but
Right.
I just started to be open about like this isn't for me. I'm kind of scared. I don't know what to do. Like if this isn't it, what is? I spent my, 20 years preparing and building my skills
Yeah.
in this area. I remember bringing up or her asking, well, what would you want to do? And so, for those of you listening that maybe are finding yourself where you're really stuck, I just want you to be comforted in knowing that my answer at that time when she said, what do you want to do? I literally could not give her an answer. I was so burnt out that I had just said, I don't know, like maybe a Starbucks barista. And that is no discredit to anyone doing that. But to me, in my mind, it
Yeah.
was like something where I don't have to think or have no responsibilities, which I know is not true. But, um, I couldn't even come up with an answer. Style came up, but again, it was something when I would flippantly say, like, I just don't even know what the pathway is to that. I don't know how I could make that a career. And
Yeah.
so I did a next step, which I think this is important. I want to bring this up. The next step I took is I did decide to leave that company and I joined another company where I was, in fact, doing marketing. Now, you guys might be thinking, well, why would you continue doing a job in marketing when you just said you were burned out from marketing? Well, here's the deal. This new job I took, it was technically a part-time role. And at the time this shift was happening for me, my daughter was going into kindergarten. And I was very clear about at that time that I wanted more space and time to be with her. I wanted to be able to walk her to school. I wanted to
Yeah.
be there to pick her up after school and be with her after school. And I thought, what the heck can I find in a 30-hour work week? Because it's technically considered part-time, but I landed this incredible opportunity with a company I truly loved. I did branding for like personal branding, really, for a woman who was an author and a speaker. And I ended up being there for 4 years. And what was great about that role is it did give me some space and time and freedom in my day just to kind of come back to myself, come back to
Mm.
sanity, not be working all hours of the day. I literally would have to clock in and clock out. I couldn't work beyond those roles, but I was still doing something that engaged me. I was a director of marketing at that company, so I was still doing things and learning things. I was learning how she had a podcast herself. She was doing content creation, which is a skill now I use, as a business owner.
Yeah.
I knew it wasn't the end all be all for me, but it did give me space. And when I was working there, she was really passionate about meditation. And so she gave us all the gift of learning transcendental meditation. And being the busybody type A person that I am, I was like, I don't know if I can sit for 20 minutes, let alone do it multiple times a day, but I went
Yeah.
and I learned. And in between the time when I learned transcendental meditation and I started practicing it, I came about a bout of insomnia. And it lasted for about a year, and it was quite possibly the worst time of my life. I was exhausted constantly. But one of the things I was doing to sort of help give myself some form of rest was I continued up this meditation practice. So she would let us, the owner of this business that I worked for, would let us do it like over our lunch hour. And so I would go into a quiet room and I would do my 20 minutes of meditation. Well, one day I'm sitting and doing my meditation and trying to find some rest. And I remember so vividly opening my eyes, and it was as if like a lightning bolt had struck me and someone had said, Ellie, you need to go do something with this style passion you have. You have to go pursue it. And I am really not a woo-woo person. This is probably the only time in my life something like this has happened to me, but it was so clear and electric that I couldn't ignore it. And so that day, and this was 3 years into working with her. That day, I went home and I don't even remember what I took a picture of. But I took a picture and I posted it on Instagram, and I decided I'm just going to start talking about style. And at that time, it looked like me documenting a lot of my outfits and talking about what I was wearing or anything related to style. And so I made a commitment to myself that I said, I'm just going to start playing around with this. And I'm just going to do it every day, which now in hindsight is very aggressive, but I'm going to do it every day until I get tired of it, or I just don't feel like it, or I get bored with it, or I run out of ideas. And long story short, it hasn't stopped. What about a year after I started that, uh, I ended up losing my job. And so in that time, that year time span of when I had started posting and when I lost my job, I was helping people on the side because of course, as soon as they saw I was talking about this, they're like, What's going on? Can you help me? Would you want to work with me?" I'm like, "Of course." I was building up my confidence. I was finding my voice. And so when I did lose my job due to the pandemic, it was as if there was no other option for me. I couldn't imagine going and applying at another corporation. It just felt like the right direction to go, even though I was completely terrified.
Yeah.
But I took the leap. And honestly, this is really uncharacteristic for me. I'm someone who likes a plan. I'm not someone who just like, hey, let's just play around and see what happens. I really need to know like what's the end goal here. It was so uncharacteristic of me, but I'm so glad I trusted my intuition at that time and just went with it
Yeah.
and let myself see what might happen.
That's amazing. Yeah, there's so many bits and pieces there. I often think, so my husband works blue collar. He's gone a lot, and I have my about to be, by the time this episode goes live, she'll be 7, and I'm 22 weeks pregnant with our second. And I cannot imagine trying to work a traditional 9 to 5 with kids. And I think at home moms are superheroes. I think moms that work a corporate job, moms in general are superheroes. I cannot imagine if we were trying to balance everything. And I did work in an office when my husband and I first got married, and it was too much. It was way too much. And we
Oh,
were both missing
hmm.
out on everything. And there's such freedom in entrepreneurship that allows us to be a little bit more present. I think there's pros and cons to no matter what
Yeah.
avenue moms pick. Um, I can't imagine. Like Elena's home this summer. She's been home all summer. I could not do that if I worked for
Yeah.
someone else.
Yeah.
There's just no way. And it's such a gift that we're able to give ourselves through our businesses and through entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And then I love that you had a job that carried over while you were playing in this world of style. I think that's so cool. And again, this idea that the universe was like, Ellie, this is what's next. Like, are you gonna pick it up, or are you
Yeah.
going to pretend it's not there? Um, but how do you think your marketing business, and as somebody who does marketing, I can imagine your answer already, but how has your 20-year career influenced your business now? What did you learn in those days from the corporate experience that has helped, or maybe even things that you've had to kind of shake off from your 20-year career? Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, let's talk a little bit about that for us.
Okay. There's a couple things that are coming to mind for me. First of all, um, when I would meet other women in my industry, other stylists, or even just other entrepreneurs, they would say things
No.
like, "It must be so great that you have all this marketing background," because that is often the thing that many women will struggle with is like, I understand do what my passion is. I know how to do that, but then when it comes to sales or marketing, gosh, I feel like a fish out of water. And I understand that feeling. And yes, I do come with a lot of experience about tactically and strategically how to put a marketing plan in place. But the thing I will say is that marketing for a company, marketing for another person is so much different than when you're marketing yourself. And what it required from me was a lot more vulnerability, a lot more self-trust, a lot more confidence in myself that I am valuable and what I have to offer is valuable. And so I will just say that it is a game changer. It doesn't matter if I had 20 years of experience, it is still one of the hardest things you will do to put a price tag onto your services and say, this is what I'm worth. And I will just very vulnerably share that when I started, the way I priced my services did not reflect the value that I was offering and the value that my clients would get from working with me because I wasn't ready for it. Like just
Yeah.
point blank, I wasn't ready to say I was worth it. I mean, and it ta has taken a lot of mindset work and a lot of, just growth for me to say what I have to offer is valuable and the price reflects that. So that is one thing. The other thing I would say that I talk about quite often because sometimes my two worlds of style and branding really do merge, and that is one of my specialties. When I'm working with women who are leaders, they're business owners, um, I notice, especially in their style, there is a fear of standing out and being different and putting their stake in the ground in terms of who they are and what makes them unique. Now, all of my background in marketing has told me, when the clients would come to me as their client service representative and say, Ellie, how can you strategically help us stand out? They weren't saying, Ellie, how can you make us sound more like our competitors? We want to
Yeah.
sound just like them, look just like them, do all the things. No, it was always, we need to show how we're different, what makes us unique. But then again, similarly to what I said before, yeah, that's great when you're talking about a company. But when you're talking about yourself, and it means that you need to claim what makes you unique, you need to claim what makes you authentic or different or makes you shine differently, even within your own industry, that people that do just the same things that you do, it is very vulnerable and it is
Uh,
scary. So when I talk about style, it's more about a courageous act of just owning who you are. And that is not only on the inside, but then reflected on the outside. And I think the outside part is what feels scary because then people can see there is a difference in the way you show up. And I have lots of stories, about clients and
yeah.
even myself, about how that's come to life in terms of where those fears show up. But I'll just stop there. But
No,
those
I
are
love it.
probably my two biggest takeaways.
I think pricing is something that's come up many, many times on this podcast, and just in general, I think it's something we all struggle with. So for those of you listening, especially if you're starting out and you're like, I don't know what to charge, know that you're not alone. Know that your prices can and will change. Something that really stuck with me from my business coach that I worked with for a few years was she said something to the effect of, we don't get to pick what other people can afford. Because a lot of times
Hmm.
we will say to ourselves, I don't want to charge so much that someone can't afford me. Now, for me, I think there's a middle ground. With my own pricing, no, I'm not charging $10 for a social media plan anymore. I'm charging $500. But I've been told repeatedly I could charge $1,000 for that. I don't want to. And I
Hmm.
think, again, for those of you listening, you get to decide what pricing feels good. What pricing seems reasonable for the client you want to work with without so much taking into account what they can and can't afford, but who is your pricing attracting? Another thing that comes to mind is a friend of mine, her name's Yvette, and I don't remember where this came from, but we get stuck in the hourly of like, how much do I need to make an hour? And she shared with me this analogy about how if you're mining in a cave and you're mining for 6 hours, you could find a diamond or you could find a useless piece of rock. So the time is not what necessarily should equate to what you're charging. It's all of the experience. Can you find the diamond? Are you the one that in 6 hours found the diamond? That's what you're charging
Hmm.
for, is that experience. So for those of you struggling with pricing, I will say, I don't think it ever gets completely easy. I still, every time I send out a proposal, I'm like, is this too much? Is this too
Nervous.
low? Is this, and for me, I constantly was told by business coaches that I needed to set packages. And my business is really hard to market because it's very unique and it's very personalized to who I'm working with. And I really like to customize my pricing and my packages for who I'm working with because every entrepreneur is
Mhm.
different. Everybody needs something different. And I found that when I tried packages, it didn't work. It didn't feel good for me. I didn't love trying to pay, oh, you need my silver package or whatever. That just didn't align. So I would challenge those of you
Yeah.
listening, let your pricing flow, let it change in time, but you are worth more than you're probably charging right now, especially if you're starting out. Ellie, would you have anything to add for those trying to figure out their pricing?
I'm tracking with everything you're saying. One of the things I was really worried about as, as I had realizations about I'm undercharging, um, what I have to offer is worth more. And I think oftentimes we can get stuck in what we think we would want to pay for or what we think is too much or too little, but we're not considering what that perception would be in the eyes of the beholder and what isn't just the number of things you offer. Because I was definitely someone who in the beginning I would put a price point and if it felt high to me, I would just jam as much stuff as possible. And then I would overwork myself and then I would be burned out and
Yeah.
resentful as a result. And I would say as I have gone along in my business, I have increased my prices and I have included less because I realized that sometimes it's not that more things need to happen in order for something to be valuable. The transformation that's happening is the valuable thing, and it's something that maybe only you can provide. The other thing I would say about pricing is that there was a time period where I felt like every couple months I was changing my pricing, and I felt nervous about it, not only in
Yeah.
terms of like what are people going to think, but I felt a little flippant. Like, doesn't she have her bleep together? I don't know if you swear, like, but
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
shouldn't she have her shit together? Like,
Yes.
why does she keep
Yes.
changing? And like, what is going on? And
Yeah.
I had to really let go of what other people perceived of it. And I really had to just learn how to trust myself. And I also had, similar to you, I had coaches around me that were saying, you are worth more. Why are you only charging this? And I think the other thing I learned is that what I was pricing was really a reflection of how I felt about myself. And
Mhm.
for me, because I was switching industries, here I am, 20 years of experience in marketing and branding, moving to what felt like a newbie in a new industry. I was like, well, I'm not the most expert person. And so I had a little bit of an imposter syndrome. The reality, though, is that I still had 20 plus years of experience. It was just being packaged in a different way.
Yes.
It took me a while to understand that. I love where you talked about the hourly versus packages. I do personally offer packages instead of hourly. Another way someone told me about, how to think about the hourly was, let's say you're a writer and you can pump out a certain number of words in an hour. And so someone gives you a project and you're like, well, I think it'll take me 6 hours. As you grow and get more skilled, you might be able to write faster. And so then, like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So, do you continue to charge that or do you charge less now, but you're more experienced? So that really, I remember hearing that early on too. And it's kind of like you are going to grow and what you can deliver in a short amount of time, you might be faster at it, but it doesn't mean it's less valuable.
Yes, I love that because I run into that. I end up creating custom packages, but I do some work through some VA agencies. With the pregnancy and everything this year, I just decided to take on some different work. And I really struggle with hourly work because, again, something that takes me 30 minutes to do would take somebody else 3 hours to do because I come with 15 years of experience. And
Yes.
how do you put I talk about this with a friend of mine all the time. It's like, how do you put a dollar amount on your experience when it comes to hourly? And then even trying to market yourself hourly. I remember all the time people who wanted to hire me hourly. I was like, okay, well, my hourly rate is X amount of dollars. And that sounds significantly higher than someone
Yeah.
you might be able to hire starting out. but the amount of work I can get done in 1 hour, you're going to pay them the same, if not more. So, on the flip
Yeah.
side, those of you looking to hire help, when you're looking at those hourly rates, really consider what can this individual, what can this professional get done in an hour. If they're just starting out, just know that it's going to take them longer to get things done. But if you're hiring someone with 15 years of experience that has maybe their rate looks like it's three, four times higher, you're going to get more output at the same time. So it's this
Yeah.
weird, hourly is really, really hard. So I'm right there with you. Like I much prefer packages. Um, and you can't even really base it like, and then on the flip side, when you're starting to do packages, you consider how long it will take you to do something, but
Yeah.
don't get stuck in that hourly idea there either.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really tricky and just give yourself some grace in the process because it does take time. And it's all part of your growth and development and it's easy to get frustrated with yourself, but I love how you said that it never gets easier. And I think even now as I'm offering packages that are pretty high ticket value, I get lots of no's and I get lots
Mhm.
of that's too expensive for me. And I have worked really hard to get to a point where it's like, well, then that just wasn't the right fit for the right fit client for me. And I'm okay with that because I do know that there are other women out there that that will be a right fit. And to just be able to stick to your guns when you get the no's and not make it mean something about, oh no,
Yes.
I'm too expensive and I need to change course, um, to really stick to what you believe in and what you feel is right.
Yeah.
Um, that just takes time. It does. And there's just no way around it. Here I am 5 years into this. And, I'm offering a package right now where I've questioned myself a lot. And every no I get, I have to remind myself, okay, it's fine. It's,
Yeah, I have
it's
a direct
fine.
sales. Yeah, I have a direct sales background, and there's a lot of hate around direct sales, but a lot of what I learned was from that industry. And it
Yeah.
sounds cliche, but one thing that was coached into direct sales people is that every no is closer to a yes, which I that has
Hmm.
always stuck in my mind. But also, I would even take that a step further, that every no is creating room for the right yes. Because if
Yes.
you convince the five, let's say you took on four people that had originally said no, you drop the price. And now somebody comes out of the blue, wants to hire you for your full price, and now you don't have time for them. And that would have been
Yep.
one client paying you
Yeah.
the full price.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's constantly shifting, it's constantly changing. And don't be afraid of the no's. Don't be afraid of the people who can't afford you because you will find the people
Yeah.
who can. All right.
Yeah.
I didn't plan to go into pricing, but I think that was a great, and I think that's so helpful because so many people,
Yeah.
I mean, you're 5 years in, I'm 7 years in, I still struggle with pricing.
Yeah.
Let's get into the nitty-gritty of Ellie's business. What is it
Yeah.
like to work with you? What do you offer? Um, give it, give it all to us, and let's make sure we talk about your podcast too, because I'd be remiss if we
Okay.
didn't talk about your
Yeah.
podcast at some point.
Yes, I would love everyone to go listen. It just launched last week. I don't know when this is going to air,
Congratulations.
but it launched in July. We'll just say that. And
Yeah.
it's called the Visibility Shift. And really, a lot of what I'm talking about on the podcast and the premise of the podcast is reflected in the way I run my business with my clients. And that is when you are someone who is already running a business, you're an established entrepreneur, you are a leader, there are always different levels at which you find yourself. And often, where I find my clients is they're not afraid of the limelight per se. Maybe they've already been speaking, maybe they've already been on social media promoting their own business. They've, started their business and they know what it feels like to be visible, but what they're craving now is a different level of visibility, which is a more authentic version of themselves. And I don't know if you can relate to this, Jen, but I know for me, when you first start a business, it's almost as if, yes, you are being yourself, but to some degree, you're kind of acting in a way in which you think you're supposed to act
Mm,
as an entrepreneur, or how maybe you're supposed to show up or look as an entrepreneur, or someone who's in marketing, or for me, someone who's a stylist. And we can sort of get trapped in sort of playing roles. And at
yeah.
some point, you realize this is exhausting and having to show up because I think somebody else will approve of it, or I think someone will like me because I show up and sound this way and look this way.
Yeah.
It's pretty tiring. And there's this place where you just feel like I'm ready to just kind of show up and authentically be me. And I'll give
Yeah.
a specific example of how this is played out, in one of my clients that I can think of recently. She had moved from, a job in corporate, where she was very successful, and then decided she wanted to, start her own business. So as she was doing that, she found herself showing up, and her clients were companies, they were corporations. And so she felt like, oh, okay, I better be really buttoned up when I show up. I want them to think I'm credible. I want them to trust me. I want them to feel like I've got them. I know what I'm doing. And she said it was the weirdest thing. I felt like I needed to dress the way I had learned to dress in corporate. So like
Oh,
neutrals and black and very polished and put together. And what we learned, when we were working with her is that is not her personality at all. Her personality is very bright and bubbly. We talk about defining a power color when I work with my clients.
mhm.
Her power color was leopard, which I absolutely love. That was her power color. But she's very girly, like likes the bows, likes the patterns, likes the prints, all of it. And she kept telling herself, well, if I show up in that way, it's not going to seem professional. My clients won't take me seriously because subconsciously, if anybody here has worked in corporate, subconsciously the message we're being told is like blazers and neutral
Yeah.
colors, that is what makes you professional and credible. And there's even rules around like dress for success that we've been told about, like when you wear certain things, you're perceived in a certain way.
Yep.
But it is exhausting. And she found herself showing up trying to be one thing when in her mind she knew she was another. She knew she was this bright, bubbly, fun personality, but she was sort of masking it. And she said, it's
Yeah.
weird. Even if I bought like a fun top that I really like, she said, I'd always put it with a pair of black pants. Or I felt like I had to put a blazer on because then all of a sudden that would make
To
me more
tone it
serious.
down. Yeah. Yeah.
Tone it down. Like, don't
Hmm.
exactly. And so the work, and with all my clients, you asked about how I work. If
Yeah.
someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I got this new job, or I'm ready to make this shift in my business, or I'm just ready to up level," before we ever step foot in a store, the first place we start is just saying, "Who is the woman that you're becoming? Who is the you inside that wants to come out and be seen?" And so, one of the things this client that I was referring to that we talked about is when you see yourself in that next level version, how do you see yourself? How is she moving? What is she wearing? What is she doing? And she's like, I just want to be myself. I don't
Yeah.
want to have to pretend like, it is exhausting. And even when you go to get dressed, instead of thinking about what you really want to wear, you're thinking about, well, what would they think makes me look credible and professional? It's actually way harder. And that's why oftentimes we will struggle in our closets because there are all these rules and expectations about how we should show up.
Yeah.
So that is a big part of the work, this foundational work we do before we ever step foot into the store is who is it that I want to be? Who's the real me? Because for so long we've been told that as a woman you should dress like this. As a woman in her 40s, you should wear this. As a mom, you should look like this. There's endless rules that started when we were little girls and have continued to create rules about how we should be. That it's hard for us to even to say, like, what do I even like? What do
Yeah.
I like? And then to have the courage to say, okay, I like that. And now I'm going to realize that all these rules I've been following have really been keeping me stuck in a little box. I've been, deferring my authority to everybody else's opinions and appeasing and pleasing everybody else that I've kind of forgotten who I am along the way. And the secret that I think many people, it just feels scary to admit is that authenticity, being authentic as a business owner is really your secret to success. And I was at a conference last month where I learned that there's actually stats behind this about being more authentic is a needle mover in your business. I learned so this came from a woman named Eleanor Beaton. She's a owner of Safi Media, but also she's a coach to six-figure female CEOs. And she had discovered in her own research that when you are more authentic in your personal brand, in your business, you will have decreased time to purchase, especially for any of you offering high ticket sales. That is a big deal. And right now, when there's a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace about who to
Yeah.
trust, decreased time to purchase is huge. Increased retention of the clients you do get, and then increased trust in someone hiring you. And it blew my mind because what I've been talking about, for years is that authenticity is the key.
Yeah.
And it is the very thing that most people are really scared to do is just to let people see you and all your weirdness and, your little quirks and everything. But it's actually the thing to your point earlier where, you know, put your pricing in the right point and know that when you do that and it's come from a very intentional place, it will attract the right people.
Yeah.
It will attract the right opportunities. And it's the same with you being you. So, all of that to say is that being vulnerable and having the courage just to say, this is who I am, take it or leave it, not in an aggressive way, but just, and when you can get to that place, let's say this client that I was talking about, when she can go there and step into a meeting wearing something that actually reflects who she is, her energy is totally different.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I love all of that. As someone who is tattoo covered and
Yeah.
experiences that a lot, I live in a very conservative area. And I just had this
Yeah.
conversation. It was actually at my daughter's t-ball game. It was probably a month ago now, which time goes too fast. But I remember there was a mom there who has a cleaning business, and she was like, "Man, I just don't feel like I can go to networking events." She also was covered in
Mm,
tattoos, and she's like, "I just feel like I have to
mm,
cover up and button up to fit into this." And it made me so sad to hear.
mhm.
When I moved to Colorado in 2018, started my business, all of that, my tagline, my hashtag for the year was unapologetically Jen. So I've done so much work in this space that it's, this is me, take it or
Yeah.
leave it. But it is hard coming into entrepreneurship, especially shifting from corporate, but in general, it's fascinating to me because we all become entrepreneurs on different journeys, right? We're
Hmm.
all offering very different things. We have very different stories, but we still feel like we have to fit into this box of some sort.
Yeah.
And the beauty in entrepreneurship is that you don't have to. And
No.
there is your circle out there. I mean, I left a networking group that I helped start a year ago because it no longer was my people. And I started my own little weekly meetup with the people that
Hmm.
aligned, that were a little bit more woo, that um, we could
Yeah.
talk about astrology and talk about business strategy all in the same conversation. But for those of you listening, there is a space where you can be the most authentic, vibrant version of yourself, or the most introverted. Maybe, I mean, I am a very big fan of wearing black. When my friend who's a stylist told me that black was not in my colors, I was a little bit devastated. I still wear it anyway. Um, but like, doesn't like whatever your authentic self is, there is a space for you. Or I
Yeah.
invite you to create the space. Create the
Yeah.
space for others because I guarantee you're not the only one. And I love that your services start from the inside out because
Yeah.
you can't find the clothes that are going to fit your brand until you figure out what that brand is. Who are you? How do you
Yeah.
show up as your best
And
self?
what I will say is that what I've learned, and when I first started my business, let me just give you like a really practical example of how these rules can kind of self-sabotage.
Uh,
Okay, so when I first started my business, I really didn't know that the inside work needed to happen. I really
mhm.
thought my job was that I'm going to transform people just by shopping and styling for them. So some of the first services I offered were that I shopped and I styled.
Yeah.
And I would talk with women about like kind of what they were hoping for, what their goals were in terms of their style. Then I would start doing that for them. What I realized is that when we started to put them in the outfits they had said they wanted, what happened is they kind of would like shut down. In the moment they're like,
Mhm.
"Wait, I don't know if I can do this." And then not that was just
Yeah.
trying the garment on in the comfort of their home. And then the idea of them walking out on, let's say, on a stage or in a big meeting or something where they're going to be very visible, like not, I wasn't ready. And so
Yeah.
what I learned is that you can say you want something for yourself and truly mean it, but you're not energetically, emotionally ready for the
Yeah.
change. And still, we start to look at, okay, where did this belief come from that you can't walk into a meeting and wear a bright color? Or you can't walk into a meeting without a blazer, or it's not okay to show your arms, or that until I lose 20 pounds, I can't go and be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Or I can't invest in myself in a wardrobe because I'm not at my goal weight. Where did these beliefs
Mm.
come from? So I started to do a little bit more upfront work. And we started digging into these beliefs. And what I learned is that whatever these beliefs are, let's say, for example, I must wear black to be taken professionally. Okay. So then when you think about, you attach something to that belief. You attach success, safety, whatever that is, that good feeling to you, you attach it to it. So then you think about, well, going to a meeting not wearing black, what might happen? Oh my gosh, they won't love me. They won't take me seriously.
Yeah.
I won't get the business. Whatever that fear is that comes up. And then the next step is that because you're so scared of whatever that is in your mind happening, you self-sabotage. So, yeah, oh man, I really love that pink dress or that all pink, suit. I love that. That makes me feel something inside, but oh, I better not buy it because I'm worried that this, that, and the other thing might happen. And so that's when it clicked and I changed my services completely. And I started with it's about a month long of work that not only are we just defining what your style is, again, going back to what do I want? We've been deferring our
Mm.
authority to everyone else for so long. It's hard for us sometimes to say what we want.
Yeah.
We go into this, what are these beliefs that maybe kept you safe at one point, but they really just don't apply moving forward into this next version of yourself. We talk about even just like learning how to dress for your body and your power colors. And to your point, I do color analysis, but it's most important for you to understand what colors actually energetically make you. So even if you aren't supposed to wear black, but black is like makes you feel great, there's
Hmm.
something to that. So we do all of this before we ever step foot into a store. And that's when I realized that is the transformation that is worth the gold. I mean, anybody
Yeah.
can go shop and style for you. And honestly, if after our work together, you want to go and hire a subscription service or you want to go to a stylist at Nordstrom, okay, fine. I don't have to be the only person that can shop and style for you. But this work up front, that is the gold because that's what
Yeah.
changes you and makes you then ready to go try on the outfit that scares you a little bit. Wear the thing you secretly love and are a little bit scared, but you're ready for it. Then you're ready. And there's a
Yeah.
big difference there.
I love it. Well, Ellie, I think you and I could talk forever, so we should probably do a part two. So I'll definitely reach out for that. But a question I always ask everyone at the end of my episodes is what is the fire that keeps you going when entrepreneurship gets hard?
Oh, the freedom, even though entrepreneurship has been the single hardest thing I have ever done, and that is not a lie. That includes having two babies and all sorts of things. It is the hardest thing I've done. It is the most rewarding. And ultimately, I love being able to choose what services I offer, choose how I ship, set my schedule. That is something that there's no price tag for, in my opinion. And that's what continues to drive me. Also, the thought of having to apply to a corporation just makes me want to vomit. I don't know why, but working for somebody else, I'm sure there's some amazing people out there, but that's what drives me is I really want the ultimate freedom
I love it.
to run things as I want to run them. So,
Yeah, I could never. Every once in a while, I'll like poke around at marketing strategy, social media jobs out there, and I'm like, I don't want to report my time to someone else. Like, I
no.
just can't do it. It's all of the hard parts of entrepreneurship are worth that alone.
It is
Ellie,
worth it.
if someone is interested in working with you, what is the best way to find you, to get in touch? I know you have a freebie that I'll make sure is
Yeah.
linked in the show notes, but
Yeah.
if someone listening is like, all right, I need to get in touch with Ellie, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, if you're on the socials on Instagram, I'm at style.decoded. I'm also very active on LinkedIn, so you can find me just by my name, Ellie Steinbrink. The freebie that Jen mentioned is called the Style Mindset Reset. And so when this conversation we were just having about these rules that we bring along with us, even from childhood, that are sort of driving our style decisions, that is a guide that will help you sort of become aware of maybe what those rules are for you and how to start to work through them. So, yep, grab that one. And then in terms of working with me, the biggest opportunity in front of me right now is I do work one-to-one with individuals. However, I have a group programming program coming up called the Visibility Edit. We start in September. And all of the stuff I've been talking about of just getting your style mindset in the right place before you make a major transformation, that is exactly what we're going to do. And that's an 8-week group experience that I am really excited about. And that'll be linked in the show notes as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, you don't hear about a lot of stylists doing a group coaching opportunity. I think
Uh-huh.
that's very cool. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to keep the conversation going. We have so many things in common, so I'm really looking forward to continuing to have you in my community, in my circle, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast today. And for everyone listening, if you want to find out more about what I do as a creative strategist, or you're interested in more information about the podcast, you can find me on Instagram at Life Jen's Way. My email is jen@jensway. My website is jensway.com. Two N's on Jen always. But Ellie, thank you, thank you. I really, really appreciate it. And like I said, let's do a part two because I think we've got a lot more to chat about.
We
I
have a
think that'd be
lot.
really cool. Cool.
Thanks, Jen.
Awesome. Everyone listening, have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you next time on Your Next Business Bestie.